But speaking of, I guess, people getting injured, yesterday I watched the KSI boxing boxing event, pay-per-view. So I ended up watching that. I haven't watched a boxing event here in a while, or most pay-per-view fights, because it's like I'm down to watch a fight every now and again, but when everything's pay-per-view, it's kind of annoying, especially if you already got to have a subscription to a certain provider, blah blah blah. It's just kind of like a weird way they do it, I feel like. And so I watched it. It was quite amazing. A lot of good fights. I'm trying to think who all fought. JJ and Swarmz. The first fight, not necessarily the hardest opponent, and he can even agree to that. Not only that, but he had only been training. His opponent had only been training for, I think, 2 weeks prior to the event. So he had not had a lot of boxing experience. He still put up a decent fight and made it a little challenging for him. And JJ won that one pretty easily. So that was the first fight of the night. So next was Deji and Fousey Tube, right? Yeah. And so Deji's KSI's younger brother. He's lost 3 fights previously, all for different reasons. He fought Jake Paul. That was his first fight originally, and he actually did pretty well against him. And then the next one after that, he was just not in shape at all. Which was, I think, not Taylor Holder, Vinny Hacker. He just was not in shape and got tired very quickly, and it just kind of, that's one reason why he lost. I think he has good power and technique, but he just gassed out immediately. And then the next fight, he lost a lot of weight, which was with Alex Wasabi. Lost a lot of weight. Technique was better. He had more energy, but then he just like hardly threw any punches. So he ended up like losing basically off of points because I believe because he just did not throw shit. This fight, he came out aggressive as hell, and he fought amazing. Like, it was a good match in general, but he kept on the aggressive side. He was on the offense almost the whole fight, and he was landing blows. Like, by the end of round 2, or I think almost like at the start of round 2, Fousey's left eye was already swelling up pretty bad, and he ended up with a bloody nose, and like he's bleeding everywhere. Like, it was a good fight. He got knocked down a couple times. Like, it was a really good matchup, and Fousey looked good. It seemed like he might have not necessarily, like, he lost a lot of weight and he had a great transformation, but I don't know if he necessarily had the boxing technique and the training down when it came to the fight itself. I think athletics, he was looking really good, and he was good, but it was hard to say if he focused on the technique too much. And so it was really cool because he ended up winning KO because his team, Fousey's team, threw in the towel after he got wailed on, and it was an amazing fight, probably one of the best ones of the night. It was brutal. It was hilarious. The whole time watching, you could see the sidemen and a bunch of those guys, which I've watched for years. So, like, all those main dudes that are JJ's best friends, one of Deji's close friends too, when it comes down to it, and have kind of been around him for years. And Logan Paul was like right next to the stage, and some of these guys, and you see him in the background, and during parts of the fights, I'm even watching the background because I'm seeing some of their reactions, especially like the highlight clips, and it's hilarious. Like, you just see like Logan just eyes wide as hell, just like, what the hell? Like, he just got knocked the hell out, and it was really cool. So I think it was a good fight. It was a good event. I think everything was really entertaining. But then it came down to the final match, which was JJ, KSI, and Pineda, I think was his last name. Supposedly a professional boxer from Mexico. and they came out. The dude's 6'3". I think they weigh roughly the same weight, but the dude looks like a stick in comparison. Like, he's bigger in the sense of he's about 4 inches taller, but he just, muscle mass wise in comparison, like the ratio, way off. JJ came out swinging, and because he knew he had to kind of prove something, and I think he did to an extent. I don't think the match necessarily went like anybody thought. Like, even JJ was kind of like, what the hell? So when they first round, almost within the first 15 seconds, JJ's throwing punches, and I think he gets him with a pretty good body shot and gets him kind of in the side of the head at one point. Not even necessarily super clean blows. And immediately the dude's like kind of knocked back a bit, not even being hit necessarily in the head that hard. And he starts complaining about back of the head, this and that. And like yelling at the ref. And like at one point he got down on one knee. I think technically when it comes to knockdowns, he was probably knocked down like 5 times throughout the match, which typically they call it. But I think even the judge was like, dude, you haven't even fought yet. And you're trying to, like, you've barely been hit and you're like falling over and doing this and that. Like, I think everybody was really embarrassed by that in the event. I think even JJ was really embarrassed because he didn't have a good opponent. Like, I think he thought that this dude was going to put up a fight, and he just really didn't. Like, I don't think he hardly landed any punches, and JJ was wailing on him pretty well. Like, I think he got him more in the body than he did in the head. And the dude just, like I said, like he was taller, but they were the same weight, and the dude just didn't have muscle. And I feel like he could just not take the hits hardly at all. And he ended up complaining like the whole time. He got down on one knee, and I think the ref at one point was even kind of annoyed with him because the announcers were like, why aren't they just calling it? Like, this dude's like giving up, but the ref was not like giving a shit. I think even the ref was like, dude, you're here to fight. You're complaining over hardly anything. Get your ass up and throw some punches. Like, he's not hitting you in the back of the head. Like, there might have been, I think there was a few that even the announcers, when they look back at some of the clips, they're like, okay, there might have been at least like a handful in here, just a small group, where it's like, okay, there's a couple of these where, yes, I guess you could have called back of the head. But they even said, they were like, well, when you're leaning forward, the arm is going to go around your head, when considering how he was fighting and that he kept leaning into it. So his arm was missing. And then there were several where it was like, it was the side and he was complaining, or where JJ's arm completely missed and it was like his arm, like his forearm and bicep was what hit him in the face and in the side of the head. And then he would keep calling like back of the head. Like, the guy was, it was kind of embarrassing. I think everybody's kind of like, damn. You could see that JJ had improved tremendously from his last fight, which would have been, I think, 3 years ago. And between his technique, his overall form, his power, his agility, like his overall fitness, he was sick and he performed really well. Sadly, his opponents sucked. Like, I think his first fight, he had someone that had more grit to him than the other dude. Like, it seemed like, considering this guy is a quote-unquote professional boxer, it didn't mean anything last night, because it seemed like every time this guy got hit, he would like grimace and like didn't want to be. And it's like which, I mean, you don't want to be hit when you're in the ring, but in the sense of like he was like scared. And it's like, do you not know what the hell it is you supposedly do? Like, you know what you signed up for. At one point, some people think he might have just been in there for a paycheck and it was trying to get the hell out of there. And that might have been true, but they ended up calling it KO. And I don't think, I think JJ wanted a KO. I don't think the fight necessarily went exactly like he wanted. I think he did want a challenge. And at the end, he did call out people. He called out Slim. He called out like Tyson Fury. He called out. I'm trying to think who else he called out. Austin McBroom, I think. A few other people. He called out a lot of people, and even the announcers and several people realized that he didn't call out Jake Paul, which has kind of been a build-up almost for the past 3 years, where they've always had a back and forth and a hatred for one another. But I think even JJ realized, considering these fights, that these two matches weren't a challenge for him, in the sense of like yeah, he got in the ring and he got into it, and you could tell he enjoyed it and he was in his element and he wants back into it. But he also realized that those guys weren't a challenge for him, where he could necessarily say that, hey, I got 2 KOs technically. I'm gonna go fight Jake Paul. And I don't even think that necessarily some of Jake Paul's opponents were necessarily good opponents either, but in the sense of like some of them weren't super challenging for him either. So I think that's one reason why JJ wants to fight at least 1 to 2 other people before he works his way to Jake, to actually give himself a challenge to work his way up. And he even said last night that he plans on fighting, I think, in January. But at this point, obviously, don't know who. It just kind of depends on what it was. But in general, the event was kick-ass. It was good. There was a lot of really good fights. And like, even some of the announcers were like, I think one used to be a boxer, one is a professional boxer that actually fights, I think, in a couple weeks. And he was like, considering everything and the audience and everything you guys were able to do, he's like, I was happily surprised by the turnout, the effort, the skill, just everything. It was a good event. So it was really cool to see. I think it was one of the first. I think it was basically the only other really big boxing event for YouTube boxing this year.